Oh, we're talking about Dutton reversing things. We saw a policy reversal today, of course, on working from home and sacking public servants. So, of course, previously he had said about working from home that public servants in Canberra ought to be back in the office. This was Peter Dutton last month.
I think Australian taxpayers who are working harder than ever under this government and barely keeping their head above water, I think they expect the government and the government employees to be working as hard as they are. And people refusing to go back to work in Canberra is not acceptable.
And as recently as the budget reply speech at the end of last month, he was saying we need to gut the public service. We need to get rid of the 41,000 extra public servants that the Albanese government has added to the ledger.
We'll reverse Labor's increase of 41,000 Canberra public servants because it will save about $7 billion a year. That's money that we can provide back to the Australian people in frontline services.
Well, you ain't getting your $7 billion anymore because Peter Dutton has woken up today and decided we got it all wrong. Here he was speaking in Adelaide this morning.
We got it wrong and we've apologised for it. We support flexible workplace arrangements, and our plan, which was only ever targeted for the public service in Canberra, Labor's been able to create into a scare campaign.
So what's left? I mean, you know, we'll just roll it all back. I suppose next week there'll be no policies left whatsoever. Stick to your guns, right? Now, the argument here is supposedly that people everywhere thought that this was an attack on working from home and that Peter Dutton was somehow going to walk into their private sector offices and drag them home or from home into the office, and if you don't do it, you're going to get in big trouble. He can't do that. He's talking specifically about the public service. Are we in a position now, Joe, where the public service has Peter Dutton so tightly by the ghoulies that in the middle of an election campaign, he would drop a policy that he was talking about ad nauseum for months?
Yep. And again, it's just. I think
humiliating.
It is utterly humiliating.
Self-immolation is just eye-watering.
I've talked to that many people on both sides who just literally cannot remember anything like this. Coming out in the middle of an election campaign saying, I'm so sorry, this centrepiece of our election platform was actually completely wrong. We'll never do it again. It's like the scene in The Fish Called Wanda where the bad guy's hanging John Cleese outside the building by his knees. He goes, I'll never apologise, never apologise. He goes, I'm so sorry, I was completely out of line. And again, this is what happens when you, and the left had the same problem as well, and they do it as well, and I've railed against them. But this is what happens when you do not stress test your policies to make sure that the mainstream community is on board and not just your usual sort of cheerleaders. And it's what happens when you don't war game, what happens when your opponents attack these policies, because that is exactly what they're going to do in an election. And you say they were just for public servants in Canberra and bureaucrats in Canberra. That's absolutely right. But that was not the narrative that was being pushed. It was being pushed as public servants full stop. And the fact that they were being cast as being lazy kind of skivers for working from home, that implied that anyone else who was working from home was actually just taking the piss and wasn't really working. And that obviously people take that to be an insult. It also suggests that the government, when it gets in, if it's not going to allow public servants to work from home, then it might start to make people in the private sector or make rules for people in the private sector or whatever to come back. And the other thing that happened is it got confused with all the growth in public sector employment full stop that has been driving employment growth in the country that everyone's been talking about, which
like
includes
nurses,
not just
police,
that's right, not just bureaucrats in Canberra, but nurses, cops, teachers, aged care workers, which are covered federally, soldiers. We're talking about people joining the army, and suddenly, apparently, in the seat of Herbert, which covers Townsville, there were actually military personnel going, hang on a minute, am I one of the 41,000 that he's going to sack?
Wow.
Am I one of the ones who won't be able to work from home if I want to?
But that's a messaging problem, right? It's
yes,
like
it
you literally announced this U-Butte policy that everyone was supposed to applaud and be like, yeah, we're cutting the fat, he's doing a doge, go for it, Dutton. And instead, you sold it so dismally, everyone who works from home or all these people in the public service were like, wait a minute, does that mean I don't have a job if Dutton gets in? For crying out loud, Libs, do better.